Okay, you all good? Let's do it. Hello and welcome to the B2C Lead Generation Podcast. You're listening to the B2C Lead Gen Podcast. My name is Daniel Hopewell here with Simon Delaney, and this is episode 88. What can we expect in 2023? The very first podcast this year, it's a prediction show we did called What Can We Expect in 2022. Today we're going to revisit that, see if our predictions were correct, and also have a look at anything maybe missed, as well as looking at some new predictions for next year and see what we're thinking may happen in 2023. Simon, I've deliberately withheld what our predictions were because we thought it would be more interesting for me. If you don't know, you're not prepared, so I'm going to read through our predictions, which I've got.
So I have no idea what these are from last year. So
yeah, well, we thought more interesting that way.
Can I just add as well, for anyone watching this, we are sat in our coats because we're in the office. I'm in the middle room, Daniel's downstairs, and as you can see, this is a 150-year-old building with brick walls, zero insulation. No one's been in the office. Just come in and turn the radiators on a few hours ago, and it's still freezing. So hence, we are both sat here in our coats currently.
Yeah, and if you're listening and you can hear strained voices, just the cold that's creeping through. That's what. Okay, so I've got our predictions list. I'm going to read them out to you. We said this at the start of January, I think it was. What we thought would be some big things would happen in lead gen. I'm going to read them through to you one by one, and we're going to sort of see how accurate we were.
So this was January 2022, right?
I think we recorded it at the end of last year, but yeah, we released it at the start of January 2022. So yeah, 12 months ago, more or less.
Cool.
Okay, first prediction that you made. I say you because you might be wrong now.
I did make them, I think. So I will take the blame for these, depending on what they
are. Number one, lead nurturing will become far more important. What are we saying?
Lead nurturing will become far more important. I think. I mean, it sounds like a very good prediction. Whether or not it became true,
it's kind of hard to measure that, isn't it? Like how much important, not you put it in, but.
So, because the way I think of it is that, I don't know I can't remember whether we discussed this at the time. We probably did, but we've done shows about lead nurturing. I think in this season is that at a good rate, you're only converting 20% of the leads that you receive. So the more that you can nurture those leads and build a relationship via different methods, this is just inroads into higher conversion rates. So I think that lead nurturings might have happened slightly more, but it's I wouldn't say there's been a noticeable change that I've seen particularly. I've started thinking companies are really on it. I mean, judging by the amount of crap that I get in my inbox, there's definitely some sort of nurturing going on, but I'm sure a lot of that's cold and not relevant to anything that I ever asked for. So yeah, in terms of a prediction, I'd say sounds like a good prediction. It's probably been some slight improvement and a bit more lead nurturing, but I wouldn't say I've particularly seen any massive improvements in it. How about you? What would you say?
I think, because I've got the benefit of having listened back to the earlier podcasts as I was doing this. So a lot of it was focused on, I think, about almost an inevitable reaction to third-party cookies sort of stopping, like other things people may do to sort of combat this. And we kind of thought, not lead nurturing in the sense of people are putting more thought into it, more just perhaps they would try and reignite old leads, maybe try and find value in that. I think it's sort of the stuff we were looking at.
And actually, and some retargeting is definitely improved, which is like, retargeting is a form of lead nurturing. I've definitely seen more of that. The thing with the cookie thing is it's a slow death, isn't it? It's not.
It's been dying for years.
It's been dying for. It's like one of those horror movies where it's like, just fucking die. Or don't. It's probably a reasonable prediction. I wouldn't say it's sort of ignited. I'd push that into this year as well, maybe even over the next 2 years. But it's like an inevitable thing that companies are going to have to get better at lead nurturing because they want to derive more value from the leads that they buy.
So yeah, we're saying. I mean, there's no end to this particular thing. Lead nurturing.
Let's just say that's
a good small.
Let's just go good prediction. Kick it down the road for a little bit.
We'll roll it into what we're thinking for next year. Okay. Next up, the costs of generating leads will continue to rise. What do you think?
Yeah, got that one. I reckon that one's definitely become reality.
I assume we kind of meant this in relation to sort of ad costs on platforms, I guess. I know we could maybe look at sort of TikTok as an outlier to it, but on the whole, I'd say that's pretty accurate.
Yeah, it's ad costs have definitely gone up. And then that sort of feeds into lead nurturing in a sense, which is probably part of the conversation. I have to listen back to it, but I'd imagine, if you're paid, because obviously what happens if you're buying leads from a lead generator, or you are a brand buying them, or however it's happening, the CPL that you pay is going to be going up as well, because people can't, just afford to keep generating leads at the same price. So, yeah, costs have definitely gone up.
Yeah, we'll move through here. That's a big tick. We can resound success after the show.
One out of how many there were. 10.
The next is interesting. I want to see what you think of this. Specifically, the wording of it. For brands collecting first-party data, zero-party data is going to be paramount.
So zero-party data. Yeah, I mean, it depends how you define it. So whether it's metadata or like progressive profiling. So I'd say, again, it's one of these things that you see some companies doing, but it's not massively prevalent. So the idea of this is that you're collecting additional information on a user as your relationship with them grows, or something changes, and it's giving marketing and sales like a greater ability to be able to resonate with that person. I think brands are definitely better at it, that maybe running their own thing. So it's kind of worked from one perspective, which is that definitely collecting more data. And by collecting more data, I don't mean in a sort of mysterious sense. I just mean they're utilizing that data. They are definitely, I don't know, a classic example might be on a e-commerce store. If someone's buying trousers, they'll start to sort of figure out what type of trousers they like, or what color, or the design, and then use that. Whether you see that particularly with a lot of brands that are buying leads, I think some companies are definitely utilizing it. I'm sort of on the fence whether that was accurate or not. They should be. I mean, because it's a great way to gain insights into people and figure out what it is that's going to be keeping them awake at night, so that you can actually sell to them.
What I thought was interesting is just that terminology is zero-party data. I feel like 12 months ago, that was very prevalent. It might just be like, where we're sort of mixing the work we're doing and stuff, that we saw it more frequently. But I'm wondering if, yes, it's important, but maybe people are not conscious of it, but maybe they're not necessarily calling it that. It's like a basic to say, right? So it's like, yeah, people asking more, people are like progressive profiling maybe, and learning more about their leads, but maybe it's not. Maybe that phrase was a bit of a vogue phrase 12 months ago. That's perhaps down slightly.
It's on the zeitgeist sort of thing. But yeah, it's a new phrase for an old thing, which is progressive profile, just collecting more information on someone that they willingly give you.
It's funny that how things, people often suggest things, and you're just calling this something new, but like it's just something that already existed. You package it up as something new. It's interesting how those sort of, like you say, those trends continue. Let's see where we are. Number 4, I think we're on number 4. Marketing operations will become a role that a lot of companies realize they need to fill. It doesn't say whether they do fill them or not, just they realize they need to fill it.
Yeah, I think that's I know I can only talk about our own experiences as a company. I think that what I've seen is definitely a realization that some companies lack the ability to wrangle software, and so they either need external help doing that, or they'll hire someone that they believe can do it. Whereas in the past, there was definitely this idea that, oh, I'll figure it out and whatever else, and it tended to lead to bigger problems than in the first place. So yeah, I think that there's a sort of realization slightly more now that marketing operations as a role, especially for companies that are generating, buying, selling data, it's kind of paramount. You need someone in the company or someone working on behalf of the company that understands how data flows, how to build landing pages, how to set up tracking, how to set up, I don't know, postbacks, APIs, all the rest of it. It's not something you're just going to learn overnight, because there's a whole it's a whole level of education that it needs. So I'd say that that's definitely people are sort of more accustomed to thinking about, whether they call it marketing operations or just like the techie person, I don't know, whatever they call it. I think there's definitely a bit more realization now that companies might need that sort of thing, and if they don't have it, that they're not like, oh, it's a fault of the software, I can't learn to do it myself. It's like, look, you're not going to be able to build a landing page, so you may as well get someone else to do it. It's definitely people are more used to thinking like that, I would say. And it's a slow change. It's not. I wouldn't say it's something that's just changed in the last year. I think it's probably been like a gradual thing that's definitely become more apparent now.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, in terms of our own clients use Datavault, have we are more of them maybe using the marketing apps we have to do stuff for them?
Yeah,
Sorry,
exactly.
go
That's
first.
what. So yeah, and that's why I'm sort of basing some of this on just conversations I have with people. Is that there's definitely, basically, who wants to dick around spending 5 hours doing something that someone else can do in 20 minutes? And a lot of it's just the knowledge that someone else can do it in 20 minutes.
I was going to ask as well, and this is not really my area, but as such, but is there a difference in between the lead buyers and the bigger brands maybe more willing to do that, get someone to do that, or lead generators are more willing still to just have a go at doing it themselves? I feel like that was a bit of a divide I've seen. Like lead generators more likely to just get stuck in.
I mean, the smaller companies, because everything's just about money. And it's not for big companies, but their budgets are bigger, so they'd naturally be willing to sort of spend more just to get things done. But yeah, with smaller companies, any way they can find not to spend some money, they'll do it. But it's you. This one, my point is, usually it doesn't actually work out like that. It's usually cost you in time or mistakes or problems far more than just sort of getting someone who knows what they're doing to do it properly the first time.
Yeah, self-help economy.
Yeah.
Okay. What was the resolution for that? Sort of truth. This is more the nurturing one.
Sort of.
this is we're grouping this with nurturing as something that will continue to happen. So
at least we're not like completely going what a load of garbage about everything.
No, I think we're sort of like 50% here, I would say.
The thing is, I can't remember my mindset at the time. So this could have been I was trying to think of like avant-garde things that were out of the ordinary, and
well, that's what's very interesting, actually. I'm not sure. The answer to it is more granular regulatory bodies will be more active. Is that true?
Yeah, I would say that is true in some respects. You look at some of the changes the FCA has been through in the last year. The ASA has started definitely clamping down more on ads. The same with the FCA, and the fact that the lead buyers, the end lead buyers, are picking up much more of the problems behind it. And this is something I just see continuing. It's not, again, it's gradual, but in the last year, there's definitely been some fairly big sort of changes in quite a lot of the verticals that lead generation operates in. But I mean, to be honest with you, it was probably a bit of a cheap prediction because it just happens every year. This is like, I'd expect to see the same sort of thing in 2023, where the noose is slowly getting tightened around anyone dealing with anything that's sort of consumer facing. And so a lot of these sort of, tactics around clickbait, effectively, let's call it what it is, it's like getting slowly ironed out.
I think as well, it's how do you measure that? Like, more bodies will become more active. That's quite vague, like not said like specifically. It's
They're
more
the best sort of predictions, aren't they?
Just you
can't disprove them.
And that, I think, is a perfect time to just here. I've done a little tot up. I've marked you an arbitrary B-. You've got a few predictions. We'll have a little note. Good effort, room for improvement. Good effort and room for improvement. I've put in my red pen. Obviously, watching this, there's no red pen. It's a symbolic red pen.
Like little Johnny at the back throwing paper and sticking it on the ceiling.
It's a B-. I think that's good. I think the good news is, the great news is, we're going straight into the opportunity for improvement, because we're going to now go into 2023.
I've got another chance. I can redeem myself.
I've got a chance. See if we can get it to at least a B+. What we're saying, 2023, what are our predictions?
Okay, so I have been having some thoughts and written a couple of things down here. So just to give you background on my thoughts, these are things that I just think will happen based on lots of conversations I have with lots of different types of companies, lead generators, brands, people that buy leads, sell leads, agencies in between, where I see market positions going, some sort of general thought projection of where that would lead things to, and whatever else. So I'm going to try and be a bit more I guess on point with these sort of predictions. So the ones that we just mentioned, I think definitely, I don't know what I was thinking at the time, but some of them are quite, like you said, they're a bit like the thing with progressive profiling. It must have been something that I was thinking about at the time quite deeply, and whatever. That probably really led to the B-. So I still think it's something that should happen. But anyway, so my first prediction for 2023, and I don't see this like specifically happening in this year, but I think there's going to be a realization that this is either going to have to happen, or companies will start sort of driving towards it. And this is something we've been talking about literally for years now, and that is a slow consolidation between two types of lead gen companies. And that I think one will be lead gen brands. So companies that generate leads on behalf of other companies will become brands in themselves. And they'll be, not exactly like comparison sites, but kind of sort of similar, where that's their sort of area that they're driving people to, and exploring niches and finding out how they can resonate with people. So that's one side. And I think the other is going to be lead generation companies that generate leads on behalf of their clients, but using their clients' assets. So it'd be like an agency, they'd be building landing pages, having media buying, but possibly selling the leads to their clients and the CPL. So both these things happen currently, right? It's not like I'm saying, oh, there's the reinvention of the fucking wheel. This is just, I think this is going to have to happen more and more, as in more and more people are going to move from knocking up landing pages for a new client they've got 2 hours ago, going on to Unbounce, knocking something together in an hour or two, nicking some copy that they got from someone else, appealing to a really generic market sector, just billions of people in it, thinking that's the right thing to do, banging it on Google, Facebook, whacking some clickbaity Facebook ads together. So I think that, they'll start to build brands in specific verticals that resonate with people, or generate leads under their clients' brands. And this is just going to be the way that lead generation companies slowly, but probably starting more and more this year, are going to work to those sort of areas. Is that a good enough prediction without fully committing to it?
I'm keeping it, my thoughts quiet, because then we can visit next year and I can grade you again. No, that's a good prediction. I think it's a lot of things we talked about throughout this year, and especially the.
Yeah, we just did a podcast about it last week, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was it's something that we discussed, and I think it's just really obvious to me, and especially while we're talking about stuff like the regulations and the FCA and things like that, and ad buying costs going up, all these things point to like having to develop a brand. Okay, so prediction number 2 is that lead buying, I think, will become a more appreciated role, and all that entails. So we've written and done podcasts on it and stuff around lead buying, and we've written 10 ways you need to think about buying leads, and talked about due diligence and auditing and all the sort of management processes of going through it. But if you look at like Lead Gen World that's happening in San Diego sometime soon, very soon, I think. I went last year. Michael Ferreira has set up a sort of course for brands buying leads that he's inviting people to. They pay hardly any money, and it's about educating them, and they take a sort of certificate and whatever else. And he's saying that there's been a massive response to it, so that these lead buyers, or the brands that can be buying leads, are sort of really taking this seriously. And the moment you start taking this seriously, because I've taken this seriously, right? Like we used to be before Dateable, before software, it was a massive buyer of leads, huge amounts of leads, tens of thousands of leads every day for years, for a decade. And it is a real role that can make or break the leads that you buy. So I think that brands taking it seriously and really dedicating resources to it, i.e. a couple of people, will make a real big change for them. And you'll start to see some of the practices potentially that we're talking about, other people are talking about, implemented in companies, and they'll really start taking lead buying as a sort of independent role in itself. And obviously, as part of that, you need the technology. So we don't want to promote Dateable. Let's just say you need something like Dateable to be able to facilitate this. You need people in place, and you need to implement all the stuff we're talking about. I can see that growing more in brands.
Yeah, I think I like,
because at the moment it's not really a thing, right? And a lot of places they're sort of it's like a neglected thing, which is the leads are crap or the leads are good. Not why don't we set up a process to make sure that we can start to predict outcomes and stuff.
Yeah, I think this links in as well to something we've sort of hinted at in previous podcasts. I think maybe I might have gone, and maybe this is wrong, but I think there's an element that the lead buying as a role in America is perhaps, I don't want to say more advanced, but maybe more serious than maybe we've seen over here. And we talked about that at Lead Gen World London, I think. We talked about the need to make it more serious. So yeah, it kind of fits in that idea that it just became appreciated and gets maybe given the time that it needs and the value it needs. Yeah. Good prediction.
What's that? Sorry,
it's a good prediction. Anymore?
Well, we don't know. Again, it's not like something's going to happen overnight. It's just going to be, I think we'll start to see it happen. But a lot of that is also driven by the type of leads people buy now. So they're not buying as many low intent because there aren't as many big farm or big shed call centers. So people are buying leads with much more intent at lower volume, and dealing directly with lead generators rather than through agencies and things. And what that means is that you might have 20 different companies you're buying leads from, and you need to manage them in a certain way rather than putting it all through one agency. The next point is that call centers, whether that's like the brand's own call center or outsourced call center, so they will buy leads basically. They're going to have to adopt a multi-channel approach to leads. So just like smile and dial all day, every day, isn't going to sort of have the impact it once had, I don't think. And that's been slowly declining. And I think that next year, the realization might start to kick in of we need other ways to be able to approach people. WhatsApp, text, different ways that we, calls, voicemails, emails, just adopting a sort of multi-channel approach, I guess.
I think that also slightly fits in with the podcast with a few weeks ago about speed to lead, not necessarily being important, but not being perhaps as sort of vital when there are other options you're presenting. Because obviously, like call centers, it's all about ringing as quickly as possible. But like you say, if you're saying to the leads, look, when's good for you? Maybe it's just a different approach in that sense too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, book an appointment. It's it's far better. The other thing, it kind of relates to that a bit, like what you were saying, is I think that we might start to see some forms change that leads are generated on that get customers closer to sales. So it's just been this sort of general thought that keep forms as short as you can, or if you're doing multi-stage forms, whatever. And it sort of relates to that, which is, if call centers are going to have to adopt a multi-channel approach, and it's not just about smile and dial, get as minimum information as you can and ring them, why don't you let the form do a lot more of the heavy lifting, so that salespeople can focus on what they're good at, which is selling, rather than sitting just waiting for someone to pick up the phone. So I think forms or processes that bring people much closer to like short calls, a lot of these call centers, they might have calls that go on for 30 minutes, 45 minutes to sell a product, when a lot of that's fact finding.
Yeah, I think this also links into the idea that I think we talked about it before. I don't know, it's a prediction, which in general, about focus on the metrics of sales rather than leads in the lead generation. If you're only focused on leads, then you're not going to do that, because you, like you said, you want a quick short form, get the leads in. If you're focusing on sales, then you're willing to have fewer leads in, but higher intent, because they've done all the work and qualified in that sense.
Yeah, exactly. And then my next prediction, which is, I believe, also my last. I want to just touch on one after this, actually, but I've not really explored it properly, but I just want to mention it anyway. But so I've forgotten what number this is. This relates to everything we've sort of discussed, which is brokers or agencies that aren't adding demonstrable value will start to really struggle, I think. So no one has a problem with brokers or agencies that are adding demonstrable value, right? It's like pretty obvious, working with them is good because of, handling X, Y, and Z. But if you're not, and it's, you're relying on something hidden, it's 2023. It's just not the way to do business with people's data, because nothing should be hidden. Why are you hiding stuff around people's data? It doesn't make any sense. And it relies on this whole where there's mystery, there's margin sort of thing. So yeah, agencies that aren't transparent and aren't adding demonstrable value. And that demonstrable value can be added via software, right? I mean, we have a bunch of clients that are agencies like that, and if they ask me questions, what can we do to add more value? I mean, a lot of them figure out ways to do it anyway, but one of them is I just go use the software. Like, you literally use the software as a tool that you're adding the value through, because if they don't have that and you do, it's a massive value added, like one of the biggest ones. But yeah, that's another prediction, but that's just related to thinking about everything else, which, if brands start getting like better lead buyers, using tech to potentially help them do that, lead generators and lead buyers working more close together, and lead generators pushing to be brands, you can see how it sort of can force a middleman out of the way. But there's still a huge opportunity and a massive case for sort of broker agency that's adding value.
Okay, your bonus prediction before we move on. Is there a bonus prediction?
Well, it's just a thing about multi-sell that we discussed.
Oh yeah.
On a previous podcast. So I just don't know. Like I don't know if will happen in this country. It's like it's massive in the US, like you mentioned, a few other countries. And I think it really depends on whether lead generators like create a strong brand or not, probably. Because a multi-sell lead is effectively a lead getting a comparison, right? So if you're pushing that as a offer to your visitors or to the consumers that land on your page, yeah, that's something that could happen. It's a prediction that I'd like to see like a few companies explore. I know a couple that do it in the UK, 2 or 3, but it's not like a sort of a given thing.
Just for future reference, when I revisit it next year to work out whether it was a correct prediction, what actually is the prediction there? That it will increase, or you just say,
my prediction is, let's wait and see if anything happens with it.
Okay, I see. You're sitting on the fence there.
Yeah.
It's interesting actually. I was looking at, I think it's Jeff Bezos. I don't know how to say a thing. Talking about how you talk about these predictions and things, and it's always thinking about what's going to change. But people very rarely ask what's going to stay the same. And I think he goes on to say that's the most important thing. Maybe it's a little bit boring. I don't know. Perhaps people will never do it. They want to see it happen. But with that in mind, like, I don't know, is it worth just reiterating what some of the things we said before? What do you think is going to stay the same going to next year? What's going to carry on? What's the constants?
Yeah, no, I agree with that completely, because when I'm thinking of these predictions, like, I don't, even in my mind, even I'm saying those predictions with doing this, I'm not like, this is night and day, this is going to happen next year. This is me thinking of what's just going to happen in the future, and we might start to see it next year, or we might not, and hopefully that'll get me out of a B-. But you're right. The key thing, and he's absolutely right, which is why he's one of the richest men in the world. What will stay the same? That's what you want to focus on. And companies will still want leads. There'll still be a lot of buyers of leads out there. Maybe more than ever. Don't know. There'll still be fraud guaranteed that's happening. There'll still be people, wanting to make a sort of quick buck. But there'll also be huge opportunity for people that add value, and for people that follow transparent processes, and they're building connections between marketing and sales, and all the things where we see the greatest success within lead generation. So I could go through a roll call of companies who are the biggest lead generators and the biggest lead buyers, and we could talk about what they do right and what they do wrong, but that's what we talk about all the time. And it's the same things crop up all the time when you speak to people that are at the sort of pinnacle of lead generation and lead buying, and a lot of it is to do with transparency. They have full knowledge of the origination point of a lead, the outcome of the lead. It gets put together, and it's like a sales and marketing team working in unison together. And they both strive for that process. So that won't change at all. It will remain exactly the same. It's like the gold standard of lead generation, understanding both sides on an equal footing, exactly what is happening in the entire lead generation, lead buying, lead transformation to sale process. So focusing on that is probably the best thing to do in 2023 because it will lead to the greatest success.
I think that's a really good point to end that. A good thing to take people into next year. Before we go, just I'll quickly say thank you to everyone for listening this year. Just like absolutely everybody else, we did a Spotify Wrapped, and we did I think 40 episodes. It's over 1,000 minutes of us just rambling away. And now people listen in 27 countries, which seems pretty mad. We also took the show to San Diego and Lead Gen World London, which was very cool. And the point of me saying this is I'm not just repeating it to boast about it, but actually just to say thank you everyone for listening, and say we'll be back in 2023 with more episodes. But for now, that was episode 88. What can we expect in 2023? Thanks for listening to the B2C Lead Generation podcast. Be sure to hit subscribe to hear more from those at the very cutting edge of the lead gen world.